Welcome back. To start this video, I want to remind you of a few things that I think are worth restating. The premise of every video I post is that we are all on the same side, regardless of your politics. Regardless of your race, gender, religion, no matter who you voted for or what you think about different social issues, we are on the same side. That is the most important thing for all of us to recognize, and that's what all of my videos up to now have focused on. And the reason that we're all on the same side is really because all of us are getting played by the same system. In the same vein, the topics I discuss in this series are really not political, they are educational. These videos are intended to inform you and everyone else who watches about the issues that affect all of us collectively and about the barriers preventing us from solving those issues. With that in mind, let's dig back in. In the last video, we pulled back the curtain on how big money flows through our political system. Things like Citizens United, super PACs, dark money, and the revolving door. It suggests a system where wealth equals influence, but how much influence and does the average person like you and I get a say? One of the most significant studies looking into this question came from Martin Gilens and Gilens Page in 2014. They analyzed about 1,800 different federal policy proposals from 1981 to 2002. They compared what average Americans wanted with what wealthy Americans wanted. Specifically for this study, people around the 50th income percentile were average Americans, right in the middle, and people in the 90th income percentile were the wealthy Americans group. Gilens and Page also factored in the stances of powerful interest groups, particularly business lobbies. They wanted to see whose preferences lined up with the policies that actually got enacted. Unsurprisingly, they found that wealthy elites and business interest groups had substantial independent influence on policy outcomes, while average citizens had virtually none. Looking at this graph in the study, you can see that when ordinary citizen support for policy increases from just say 10 to 90%, the chances of that policy being adopted barely changes, staying flat at around 30%. But when wealthy elite support rises from 10% to 90%, the probability of adoption more than doubles, jumping from about 18% to 45%. And when what average citizens want directly opposes what wealthy elites want, the wealthy generally get their way. The study concluded that the preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. This suggests our political system responds primarily to the desires of the wealthy and affluent, not the majority. Now, this research looked at data ending in 2002. As we discussed in the last video, the situation arguably got worse after the 2010 Citizens United decision further unleashed money in politics. And this study only looks at the 50th and 90th income percentiles. So you can imagine that the effect is even more pronounced if you are in, say, the top 1% or the richest person in the world. Regardless, this study gives us a baseline. For decades, the system has heavily favored the rich. Now let's connect some dots and use a concrete example that illustrates exactly how this plays out. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, or the TCJA. In late 2017, the Republican-controlled Congress and President Trump pushed through a massive overhaul of the U.S. tax code, the largest set of changes to the tax code in 3 decades. Now, leading up to Congress voting on the bill, President Trump publicly and repeatedly framed it as being primarily for lower and middle-class working families, explicitly stating that it would not primarily benefit the wealthy.
We will ensure that the benefits are focused on the middle class, the working men and women, not the highest income earners. Our framework includes our explicit commitment that tax reform will protect low-income and middle-income households, not the wealthy and well-connected. They can call me all they want. It's not going to help. I'm doing the right thing, and it's not good for me, believe me.
But what did the actual bill do, and where did nonpartisan analyses show the benefits actually going? Let's break it down. The centerpiece of the TCJA was a huge permanent cut to the corporate tax rate, dropping it from 35% down to 21%, meaning big companies will have to pay much less in taxes. It also included various changes for individual taxes, most of which were temporary and more often benefited higher earners. Okay, so what did the public think? Was this a popular bill that most Americans wanted? Well, no. Major surveys consistently found more Americans disapproved of the TCJA than approved, with only about a third of Americans approving. People were worried about its impact on the national debt and felt it was primarily designed to help corporations and the wealthy, exactly who the president claimed it wasn't for. And those worries were largely correct. Nonpartisan analyses showed that the TCJA delivered dramatically uneven benefits. As this graph shows, households in the top 1% received an average tax cut of about $61,000, while middle-income families got $900, a staggering 67 to 1 difference. And this chart reveals how the wealthiest Americans also received the largest percentage increase in after-tax income, about 3% for the top 5% of earners, compared to less than half that for the bottom 60% of Americans. And unlike the corporate tax cuts, which were made permanent, most individual tax cuts were set to expire after 2025, this year, meaning the long-term benefits overwhelmingly flow to corporations and the highest income Americans. It was also projected to add significantly to the national debt, somewhere in the range of $1.5 to $2 trillion over 10 years. So if the public didn't want it, an analysis showed it mainly benefited the wealthy and corporations while increasing the debt, why did it pass? This is where we see the dynamic Gilens and Page identified. While average citizens were opposed, this policy was a top priority for wealthy donors and corporate interests because, of course, it benefited them. And politicians in power openly admitted that was the case. For example, this is what Chris Collins, a Republican congressman from New York, responded to a reporter asking about the proposed tax bill.
My donors are basically saying, get it done or don't ever call me again.
And Lindsey Graham, a Republican senator from South Carolina, had this to say when he was asked what would happen if his party wasn't able to pass the bill.
The party fractures. Most incumbents in 2018 will get a severe primary challenge. A lot of them will probably lose. The base will fracture. The financial contributions will stop. Other than that, it'll be fine.
They weren't even hiding it. Politicians just bank on the fact that most people either don't understand how the system works, aren't informed about the issues, or they don't care. So much so that they openly admitted what was happening. Wealthy donors and corporate lobbyists told them, pass these tax cuts for us or we ain't give you no more money. And Congress did exactly what the donors told them to do, despite public opposition and the administration's own public framing. And just hours after the tax bill was signed into law, literally the same night, President Trump spoke privately to friends and wealthy patrons at his Mar-a-Lago club, and he seemed to confirm who the primary beneficiaries actually were when he told them,
You all just got a lot richer.
You all just got a lot richer. Now, whether you voted for President Trump or not, that feels a lot different than
that tax reform will protect low-income and middle-income households, not the wealthy and well-connected. They can call me all they want. It's not going to help. I'm doing the right thing.
Now, I want to make a point here, and that is it's easy to point fingers at one party or one president, but this problem is not limited to one party or one president. The underlying issue that the tax system and other important policies are often shaped by and for those with wealth and influence is something that is systemic. For instance, the year before this tax bill was passed, this happened.
We have undocumented immigrants in America who are paying more federal income tax than a billionaire. I find that
let me just tell you very
astonishing.
Simply, we're entitled, because of the laws that people like her pass, to take massive amounts of depreciation and other charges, and we do it. And all of her donors, most of her donors, have done the same thing as I do.
Okay.
And you know, Hillary, what you should have done? You should have changed the law when you were a United States Senator. If you don't like it, because your donors and your special interests are doing the same thing as I do, except even more so.
Well,
you should have changed the law, but you won't change the law because you take in so much money. I mean, I sat in my apartment today. I sat there watching ad after ad after ad, false ad, all paid for by your friends on Wall Street that gave so much money because they know you're going to protect them. And frankly, you should have changed the laws. Trump, if you don't like what I did, you should have changed the laws.
Mr. Trump, I want to ask you about one last question.
Did you catch that? After Hillary criticized him for not paying taxes, he left her speechless because he was right. And they both know that's how the system works. Politicians pass laws and make policies and rules that disproportionately benefit the wealthy because our system, with things like Citizens United and so on, allows the wealthy to hold their money over our elected politicians' heads, whether or not those politicians actually want to serve their constituents. So the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the TCJA, is a textbook example of the Gilens and Page findings brought to life. Public opinion was largely ignored. The preferences of wealthy individuals and corporations through lobbying and explicit donor pressure became the policy. Policy outcomes reflected the desires of the wealthy, not the average citizen. And again, this isn't just a story about Republicans or Trump. While they had power in 2017, the underlying mechanisms, donor influence, corporate lobbying, the alignment of policy with wealthy elite preferences, those were in place long before then. Those issues are systemic. They persist regardless of which party controls Congress or the White House, even if the specific policies might change. The core issue is that our system allows economic power to translate so directly into political power, drowning out the voices of ordinary people. Understanding this dynamic, that policy often reflects the wishes of the wealthy few rather than the broad public, is critical, because only by understanding the real rules of the game can we ever hope to change them. In our next video, we'll dive deeper into the machinery of influence, looking more closely at the role of lobbyists and the networks of ultra-wealthy individuals and families who actively shape our political landscape. As always, the goal here is to foster informed conversation. Please share this video if you found it helpful. Talk about these issues, the research I presented, the tax bill example. Talk about it with people in your life to inform them. And if any of this resonated with you, please put your thoughts in the comments below. And remember to fact check everything, including me. Google is your friend.